Welcome to Woven in True Crime, where real stories intertwine in a web of mystery and intrigue. Here, we delve into the most unsettling cases, exploring untold secrets, evidence that defies logic, and the minds behind crimes that have left communities scarred forever. Each episode is an invitation to uncover layers of lies, tragedies, and obsessions that surpass fiction. Prepare to look beyond the obvious, for in the shadows of the darkest stories, the truth always finds a way to emerge. Today, we go to Brookdale, a quiet town in Vermont, which harbored unimaginable secrets. In the Harper household, a series of family tragedies shocked the community, raising questions that still echo today. Amidst devastating losses and a mystery that unraveled over decades, Evelyn Harper's story makes us question how well we truly know those who live beside us. What happened within the walls of that brick house? And were all the secrets truly revealed? The night was cold in Brookdale, Vermont. The small town, known for its quiet streets and neighbors who knew each other by name, slept under a starry sky. But in a modest house on Maple Street, the calm was brutally interrupted. Evelyn Harper, a 27-year-old woman with weary eyes and disheveled brown hair, held little Rebecca in her arms. The room, lit by the flickering light of a lamp, felt stifling. The faint cry she had heard moments before had dissipated, replaced by an overwhelming silence. Rebecca, just 9 days old, lay unnaturally still. Desperation rose like a tidal wave, and Evelyn, her breath quickening, experienced a fear that paralyzed her. The room's air felt heavy, mingled with the faint scent of baby lotion and the oppressive warmth of tears streaming down her face. Thomas, her husband, entered quickly, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the hallway. The panic-filled room turned into a blurred fog, and the arrival of the paramedics brought a flicker of hope. However, their expressions soon shifted from determination to restrained concern. Precise and swift movements filled the room, but soon came the exchange of glances everyone feared. A slight nod, and the silent verdict was given. Brookdale felt the impact. Rebecca's death echoed through the town, bringing neighbors with words of support and acts of solidarity. Evelyn received hugs and condolences with trembling hands and a distant gaze. The visits, gentle touches, and quiet voices seemed to comfort her, but something deeper and hidden emerged, a yearning for comfort and attention that only tragedy seemed to provide. Little did the townspeople know that this initial tragedy was only the first clue in a much darker puzzle, with pieces no one would dare imagine. Evelyn Harper did not know love in her childhood. She grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, in a house where screams echoed down the hallways and the sound of slamming doors was constant. Her father, a man with a harsh face and sharp words, never offered a smile, and her mother, trapped in her own laments, was a distant presence. Evelyn learned early on that survival required silent resilience. Marrying Thomas in 1960 seemed like a promise of escape. With him, she found stability and hope. Daniel was born in 1962, and 2 years later, Martha arrived, bringing laughter and the sound of little footsteps running through the house. To the residents of Brookdale, Evelyn was a devoted mother, with a quiet presence that sometimes seemed to carry a shadow of worry. The town was a picture of American life, with tree-lined streets that turned orange and red in the fall and a comforting silence that only small towns knew. News of Rebecca's death swept through Brookdale, touching everyone like a cold breeze. Neighbors brought warm dishes, handwritten letters, and offerings of solace. Evelyn received each gesture with a detached expression and eyes that did not reflect the comfort offered. As the weeks passed, the visits dwindled. Silence in the Harper household grew like a plant spreading out of control. Thomas, although supportive, seemed lost in his own grief. Evelyn, for her part, felt the familiar emptiness return, an unease she had carried since childhood. The comfort and attention she once felt began to fade, leaving behind an insatiable desire she could hardly explain. But as the days dragged on, an unexpected presence began to watch more closely, and what it discovered would not be easy to ignore. A few weeks after Rebecca's death, the Harper house remained a sanctuary of mourning. Daniel, the eldest son, 3 years old, had always been a source of joy, filling the hallways with laughter and the sounds of childhood. But something changed. Abruptly, he began showing signs of weakness, an inexplicable malaise that Evelyn watched with growing concern. His movements slowed, and the color that once animated his face faded. What initially seemed like a passing illness escalated quickly. One cold morning, Daniel became unresponsive. Panic overcame Evelyn as she held him, feeling his small body grow cold. Thomas rushed him to the hospital with desperate urgency, but the battle was already lost. Doctors recorded his death as acute cardiac failure, a rare and unusual condition for a healthy child. Brookdale was shaken by a second tragedy. Sympathy and support returned to the Harper home, but this time, accompanied by whispered suspicions. Some people quietly commented on the improbability of 2 such close deaths, while more experienced doctors exchanged glances filled with silent doubts. Evelyn continued to receive visitors, each embrace and word of comfort feeding a longing she couldn't name. Thomas, in turn, began to withdraw emotionally. Grief consumed him in isolation, and he spent more time away from home, buried in a silence that Evelyn could not break. The community's condolences began to mix with an unease that lingered over the town. Doctors and social workers started discussing the tragedies more seriously, questioning the unfortunate sequence of events. What Brookdale didn't know was that this new loss was not an isolated case, but part of a sinister cycle far from over. By 1966, the Harper house continued to bear the weight of grief within its walls, but life, in some way, carried on. Martha, the second child, only 4 years old, still brought a hint of innocence to the home. Her small footsteps echoed softly down the hallway, a fragile reminder of happier times. But the peace that remained would be short-lived. One night, Martha began to have seizures. Evelyn watched with a lost look, wide eyes, and trembling hands. On the way to the hospital, hope and despair intertwined in a suffocating vortex. The doctors worked for hours, but, as with the others, Martha did not survive. The cause was attributed to a rare neurological condition, but the town, which once only mourned, began to wonder, how could one family be struck by so many tragedies? Murmurs among the doctors gained momentum, and some theories began circulating. Some said the Harpers might carry a defective gene, others suspected something more sinister. What was once empathy turned into a silent discomfort among the neighbors. Evelyn still received condolences, but she noticed some hugs were shorter, and the looks carried a hint of doubt. Thomas, already distant, now seemed like a ghost in his own home. He spent his nights on long walks through the town, searching for answers he wasn't sure he wanted to find. Evelyn, for her part, felt a mix of pain, loneliness, and something darker, a need that gnawed at her and kept her awake during the longest nights. In 1968, the Harpers adopted Peter, an attempt to restore some semblance of normalcy. But less than a year later, tragedy struck again. Peter was found lifeless, with signs of asphyxiation, though no clear evidence pointed to the culprit. Suspicions became more vocal, and the police began to monitor the family. Neighbors' glances were now judgmental, and shadows of doubt stretched long over the brick house. But Peter's death brought something else, a discovery so disturbing that it would start to rewrite the destiny of the Harper family. In early 1971, Evelyn gave birth to Abigail, a new attempt at renewal for the Harper family. But this time, the birth did not go unnoticed. Doctors and social workers kept a close eye on the house, as if every gesture of Evelyn's might reveal the next move in a sinister drama. The town of Brookdale was watchful, and the weight of this vigilance pressed on every detail of Evelyn's life. In February 1972, Evelyn arrived at the hospital with Abigail in her arms, saying the baby had stopped breathing. The medical team mobilized in a frantic effort, but once again, they were unsuccessful. Examinations indicated clear signs of suffocation, and the death was recorded as suspicious. Whispers turned into louder voices, and the police intensified their investigation. Evelyn was called in for an interrogation that would mark a turning point. In the cold, impersonal room, the sound of the wall clock punctuated each second as investigators asked incisive questions. Evelyn maintained her composure as long as she could, but the relentless pressure led her to confess, in a moment of tension, to suffocating Abigail. The shocking admission echoed through the town, and Brookdale became the focus of national news. The confession divided opinions. Some saw Evelyn as a troubled mind, while others believed she had been pushed to the edge by a forced investigation. Forensic psychologists studied the case, suggesting that Evelyn suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This disturbing diagnosis explained a behavior where caregivers induce illnesses or deaths to gain attention and sympathy. The community, once full of empathy, now questioned everything they thought they knew about Evelyn Harper and the deaths in the brick house. The questions did not end with Evelyn's conviction. In fact, they only began to reveal the true mystery behind the walls of the Harper house. Evelyn Harper's trial was a spectacle that paralyzed Brookdale and drew the curiosity of the entire country. The small town was divided between those who still saw Evelyn as a tragic figure and those who believed that behind her calm demeanor was a disguised monster. The diagnosis of Munchausen syndrome by proxy was a turning point, but the evidence and confession secured Evelyn's conviction, sentencing her to 20 years to life imprisonment. Thomas, visibly worn, appeared in court to testify. His gaze was vacant, and his words, few. After the trial, he left Brookdale and never returned. Those who knew him remembered him as a shadow of the man he once was. Brookdale, meanwhile, tried to move on, but the Harper house continued to provoke silent fear. Passing by it was like reliving the tragedies. In prison, Evelyn became an enigmatic figure. Guards reported that she kept a diary, but the pages were filled with fragmented sentences and reflections no one could fully understand. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were carefully chosen, always maintaining doubt about what truly happened. During the interviews she granted, she insisted that her children's deaths were the design of a higher power. The town, now modern and revitalized, continued to avoid the Harper house. It was as if the bricks held memories that could never be erased. Children were warned not to go near, and adults, even without saying it aloud, carried discomfort in their eyes. Even after Evelyn's conviction, Brookdale knew that the darkest chapter of its history still cast a shadow, and perhaps always would. Decades later, Evelyn Harper finally obtained parole in 2013. Her release from prison was an event that rattled Brookdale. The town, now renewed with new generations who only knew the stories through whispers, felt the weight of the past once more. Evelyn, now elderly, walked slowly through the streets, always with hunched shoulders and eyes fixed on the ground. Her presence was a reminder of the darkest chapter in the town's history. The Harper house, still standing, was a landmark of collective memory. The dusty windows and locked doors seemed to watch passers-by in silence, as if they held secrets that would never be revealed. Children ran to the other side of the street when passing by, and even adults avoided looking directly, as if afraid of what they might see. Evelyn lived in isolation, rarely seen in public. It was said that she spent her nights awake, sitting in a chair by the window, watching the shadows move under the moonlight. On some nights, neighbors swore they could hear light footsteps and the creaking of wood, as if the house still kept the echoes of those who once lived there. In the days following her release, the media revisited the story, questioning what Evelyn might reveal now that she was free. But she remained silent. One page of her diary, left behind, bore a single phrase: "Some secrets are safer in silence, where they can't hurt anyone anymore." And as Evelyn continued to walk through the town in silence, Brookdale wondered, were the secrets of the Harper house finally at rest, or were they merely waiting for their moment to emerge once more?